Hello, good evening. This is extraordinary for me in that the sun is pretty much gone down, but this is the best time for me to be able to do the reflection for this 24th Sunday. We begin with the first reading from the book of Sirach, chapter 27, verses 30 to chapter 28, verse 7. This passage readily brings back to memory the second of the Old Testament great commandments. Love your neighbor as yourself. When we read, think of the commandments, it's a quote from that first reading. Think of the commandments. Hate not your neighbor. Remember the Most High's covenant and overlook faults. The emphasis here is to obey what God commands and not obey our human inclination to pay back in kind what we have received from our neighbor, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. Then on to the gospel reading, Matthew chapter 18, verses 21 to 35. In this gospel, Jesus is commanding that we forgive as we have been forgiven by the Father, or as we have been taught in the Our Father prayer. Forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. In other words, as Jesus says in Matthew chapter 7, verse 2, for as you judge, so you will be judged, and the measure with which you measure will be measured out to you. To forgive our brother or sister from our heart, especially when we have been deeply wronged, is not possible to do out of our own natural resources, but requires first that we live deeply in the love of the Lord. Only the divine can give that depth of love. And then from the second reading, Romans chapter 14, verse 7 to 9. If we are people who live daily out of the love that God gives us daily, then, quoting from that second reading, none of us lives for oneself, and no one dies for oneself. For if we live for the Lord, and if we die for the Lord. So then, whether we live or die, we are the Lord's. When we belong to the Lord and to nothing or no one else, then the Lord, the infinite source of love, belongs to us. Then we have the strength to love as the Lord loves. God bless you all.